The Tuesday morning sunlight, typically a comforting presence, seemed to cast a harsh beam that revealed a deep, aching wound. I stirred from sleep with that all-too-familiar tightness in my gut, a persistent shadow that had lingered for months. It wasn't merely the pressure from work or the nagging sense that I'd overlooked something vital. It was the way Jane's eyes stayed glued to her phone, the way she recoiled slightly at my touch, the subtle half-truths that had begun to infiltrate her daily words. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself it was all in my mind, that the growing distance was just the natural rhythm of a marriage approaching its 10th year. At breakfast, we moved through our usual strained routine, sidestepping each other with practiced care. Jane chatted about a new yoga studio opening in town, her gaze avoiding mine. I nodded along, feigning interest while stirring my coffee with too much force. Then the mail arrived. A stack of envelopes landed on the counter, mostly bills and advertisements, but one stood out. It was a plain white envelope, no sender's address, with my name scrawled in a rushed, uneven hand. I picked it up, a mix of curiosity and unease swirling within me. "Probably just junk," Jane remarked, her hand waving it off casually. Her eyes didn't meet mine, and her dismissive tone, so carefully nonchalant, sent a sharp pang through me. It felt too deliberate, too forced. My instincts, which had been sounding alarms for months, now roared with urgency. I tore open the envelope right there at the table, my movements slow and deliberate, almost agonizing. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Jane, her face glowing with a warm flush, kissing another man, not a fleeting peck, but a deep, intimate embrace that spoke of hidden passions and secrets that excluded me entirely. The room seemed to spin. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor in a distant, muted clatter. Jane stopped mid-sentence, her words dangling like shattered fragments in the air. Her eyes widened, mirroring the stark reality of being exposed. Her face paled, as if the life had drained from her, leaving a ghostly shell. "Junk mail?" I asked, my voice low and edged with a pain so sharp it felt like a physical wound. I held the photo up, my hand trembling faintly. The kitchen fell silent, the only sound the frantic pounding of my pulse. Her initial attempt at denial collapsed instantly. She stammered, a jumble of excuses tumbling out, but I couldn't process them. A deafening wave of betrayal drowned out her words. The image of her entangled with another man seared itself into my mind, reducing years of trust and love to smoldering ruins. "Who is he?" I demanded, my anger simmering just below the surface, barely contained. It took everything to keep my voice steady. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape, before she finally whispered a name: Daniel. It meant nothing to me, a stranger who had somehow infiltrated my wife's life, oblivious to the wreckage he'd caused. The audacity of someone capturing that moment in a photograph only fueled the fire raging within me. "Get out," I said, not a yell but a low, guttural command laced with a quiet fury that startled even me. She flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "Please," she begged, "let me explain." I looked at the woman I'd built a life with and felt only a cold, hollow void. "You've said enough," I replied, my voice stripped of feeling. "Leave before I say something I'll regret." Her movements were frantic, disjointed, as she gathered a few belongings. I stood motionless, watching as she slammed the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavier, more suffocating than any argument could have been. Over the next few days, I was consumed by a relentless drive. The anger, once tightly controlled, erupted into a blazing inferno. I needed to unravel every detail of this betrayal, to dissect it with obsessive precision. Using connections I rarely tapped outside of work, I soon had a name, an address, and a face. Daniel wasn't just a figure in a photo, he was a local real estate agent, young, smug, and polished, the kind of man Jane used to mock. I went to his office. He was seated at his desk, phone in hand, a bored expression shifting to fear the moment I stepped inside. "Daniel," I said, my voice low and menacing. I approached his desk, cutting off any chance for him to speak. His eyes scanned the room for help, but the office was deserted. He managed a weak, nervous smile. "Can I help you?" he asked. I didn't respond. Instead, I seized his shirt, yanking him across the desk until our faces were inches apart. My fist struck his jaw with a force that sent him sprawling, his chair toppling to the floor. The fight was raw, driven by a fury that teetered on the edge of insanity. I landed punch after punch, each one a release of the pain and betrayal festering inside me. He tried to defend himself, but my rage overwhelmed him. The office turned chaotic, papers scattered, furniture upended, as I unleashed my anger. Finally, I stepped back, breathing heavily, watching him crumpled on the floor, battered and blooded, his nose bleeding, his eyes wide with terror. "Stay away from her," I warned, my voice shaking with unrestrained fury. "If I see you near her again, I'll finish what I started." He whimpered, nodding, his hand gingerly touching his swollen face. Okay, he mumbled. "Just leave me alone." Leaving him there was only the beginning. I wasn't done. I had learned where Daniel lived, an upscale apartment building, when I tracked down his office. I went there next, waiting outside for hours until he returned. When he saw me, his bruised face paled further. I smiled, a cold, predatory grin. "I'm not finished," I said, watching the fear deepen in his eyes. As he fumbled for his phone, I snatched it from his hand and smashed it on the ground, shattering it. I didn't want him calling for help. I attacked again, hitting and kicking until he collapsed into a trembling heap. As I struck, I told him how he'd destroyed my life, how deeply his actions had cut. I didn't care if he registered my words. I needed to say them, to make him understand the weight of his betrayal. When he could barely move, I walked away. But my wrath wasn't sated. I turned my focus to Jane. I reached out to her family, her co-workers, anyone she'd ever known, ensuring they all learned of her betrayal. I didn't care about her reputation or the fallout. My only goal was to dismantle the life she'd built on a foundation of deception. A week later, Jane appeared at my door, pleading for forgiveness. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face haggard, the confidence she once carried completely gone. I felt no satisfaction, only a deep, aching emptiness. I didn't let her in. "Go away," I told her, "and don't come back." The weeks that followed were a haze of legal battles, dividing possessions, and untangling our shared life. The pain lingered, a constant ache in my chest, but the anger had dulled. In its place was a quiet resignation, an acceptance that this was the path forward. I never spoke to Jane again. The future was uncertain, but I walked it alone, finally free from the web of lies and betrayal.